Okay, let's get into it. Let's get into the nitty-gritties of what all the advanced brain states even are. Pete, let's share this with them now.
Yeah, look, the brain researchers have found that our brain operates on different channels, levels of electrical activity. They discovered them using the electroencephalograph. So if you've ever seen an old black and white photo of a person sitting there in a chair, there's all these wires coming off the top of their head, right? That was the old electroencephalograph. And they found initially our brain operated on 4 main levels of electrical activity. They're a little bit like gears in the car or different stations on a television. Depending on which one you're in, it influences how you feel, how you behave, but most importantly, it influences how you perform. So once you understand these levels, it helps you. But what's more useful is when you kind of start to understand which one you're in. And then, as I talked about earlier, but the most useful is when you guys have mastered how to deliberately change from one level of the brain and mind to another at will. Once you've learned how to do that, it opens up this enormous possibility for you to be able to tap into and use a little bit more of the power of the brain and mind. So the slowest and deepest level of the brain is the delta level. It's the level of unconsciousness and coma. It operates from around 1/4 up to 4 cycles per second. Very uncommon in the middle of the day to come across a person with their brain in delta. If you did, you'd probably notice them. You know that saying, the lights are on, there's no one home? They're in delta, right? Unconsciousness, coma, low brain activity. The next level up though is our main sleep level, and they call that the theta level. So we spend 70% of the night with our brain in theta. So because we spend so much of the night with our brain in theta, very, very common to wake up in the morning and the brain's still in that theta level. And if you wake up in the morning and your brain's in theta, it's not so much that you feel cranky or irritable. It's sort of more the feeling that before you've even got out of bed, you feel like you haven't had enough rest. You give anything for an extra 10, 15.
I do that sometimes.
Yeah, that's
I'm like, I've only had 10 more minutes sleep.
Exactly, and you wake up just before the alarm clock. It might be set for 7, but at 6:59.
I do that. I'm like,
again.
Damn it!
Because it's a sleep level, you don't feel refreshed, right? So if you've ever had that feeling where you're lying there thinking, if I skip breakfast, if I don't have a shower, that sort of thought, I could get 20 minutes more in bed.
Do my makeup in the car.
All of that, right. So that's the theta level. So those two, to keep it really simple, they represent nighttime brain activity. Sometimes in astral projection, really deep meditation, we access theta as well, but usually the researchers just say theta and delta, nighttime brain activity. So during the day, we move into the beta level as part of our natural development. And beta has become what the brain researchers now call our predominant brain rhythm. So most adults spend around 90% of the day with their brain in the beta level. And it's the level of logic and reasoning and analysis, and it's like this level where we plan, and organize ourselves and we take action. Look, it's a super useful level of the brain to operate in, but what the researchers are finding is that the weaknesses and drawbacks of so much of the day stuck in beta, they are getting more and more common.
Yeah.
So that's why we have worry, we have negative thinking, we tend to have all these fears and phobias that stew over as part of our subconscious programming, all coming to us when we're in this beta level. So what beta is doing is actually enabling the negative thinking, the fears, the worry, and of course, the electrical activity in our brain in beta, because our brain is overwhelmed with stress and activity, and there's a direct relationship between how stressed we are and how uptight we are, and the more stressed and the more uptight we are, the more the little brain cells and neurons fire off all over the place in what they call a desynchronized or a scattered manner. And if you've ever heard the term a scatterbrain, or a person is very scattered, you might have even noticed that. Person jumps from one thing to another to another. It's a representation of what's going on in the brain. So if I was to put it very simply for you, what we teach people how to do in our main training course is to teach you how to quite deliberately slow your brain rhythms down and switch out of beta and learn to master your thoughts, still your mind and focus your thoughts so you can access the alpha level during the day. So the alpha level of the brain is often referred to as the zone. And when a person's on fire or they're on a roll or they're in a really good mood, their brain is in that alpha level. And the reason why alpha is so powerful is that there is this focused mental energy. The sun out there in the world shining down on our life, if it's focused through a magnifying glass, all of a sudden we notice we've got all this power and potential there that we didn't have before. And it's a little bit like what happens in our brain when we switch out of beta and go into alpha. So the mental energy that we once had that was spent thinking about 10 different things at once is able to be focused, and that is why in alpha you have super learning. The ability to concentrate, the ability to be able to remember, to focus, to have clarity of thought, get on a roll with ideas. And you have probably had moments where you've slipped into the alpha level before during the day by accident. And you probably noticed the difference in how you felt and how you performed. This is what sports psychologists help athletes to do. They help them to prepare and to set up triggers or keywords or mental frameworks that they can use, that even in the midst of, the thousands of people, you see it on TV, that they've got their eyes closed before the event, these athletes, and they got the ear things in and they're listening to the music or they're getting themselves ready so that when the gun fires, the program in their brain rolls out beautifully. They're not sitting there thinking, I hope I don't mess up under pressure. I hope I don't look too good in this swimsuit or whatever, right?
Yeah, and all their neurons in the alpha level, they're firing together, and I love this. I love it. We always joke around together, don't we? When your neurons are firing together.
And that's what it's like when you're on a roll, right? Because when we're scatterbrained, brain jumping one thing to another, when you're in alpha, they fire together. And guys, that is why we concentrate better when we're in alpha. It is why you have clarity of thought. You have the ability to be able to stand up in front of a group of people and do a presentation, and your mind and your mouth are linked. Have you ever had the opposite? Where you're standing there and you're like, you got these thoughts, but you can't quite get them out, and you stumble over your words. It's a reflection of what is going on in the brain. So once you know how to actually switch yourself, even in the presence of stress, switch yourself into alpha, you can access these abilities quite deliberately. So, musicians who can sit down and write beautiful music, or if you're an artist, or you do some sort of craft or creative activity where you paint or you draw, or you just do something that you absolutely love. Have you ever had that feeling where you're totally engrossed in something and then you stop for a moment, have a look at your watch and think to yourself, oh wow, that's been an hour, but it only felt like 10 or 15 minutes? That's alpha. And I'm sure you would agree, during that time, you don't actually really think about what you're doing.
You're just so engrossed in what you're doing. It's like reading a book. Before you know it, you're at the end of the book, and it's like, you remember all the different characters, and you've got this beautiful picture of the storyline and what it looks like, and it feels like you're right in there.
That's it. And that sort of feeling, those sorts of abilities, that's what we're talking about. That's what's in us. You know what? If you've read one book like that, in fact, if you've done anything once in life, what does that mean? If you've done it once, you should be able to
do it again.
Right? Do it again. And I'm sure you can imagine how useful it is. I mean, if you're sitting down to learn some information, maybe you're learning to trade futures or shares, or you've got to do a certificate for work, or you're at the moment in your life studying to achieve some sort of certificate or to earn a degree or learn something new for your further education, that ability to be able to get your brain to actually almost mentally say to yourself and prepare yourself, okay, I'm about to sit down and do some study, and I want my brain to absorb that information. the way you read that really good book, where you kind of enter the world, you understand the concepts and the ideas, and that lives in your brain. This whole book's written on it. You know what it's called? Super learning. And we've all got the abilities. And you know, they say the key to super learning, an altered state of mind. A lot of people go, what does that mean? Well, just alter the level that we're normally in. You don't want to be trying to learn something new when you're all stressed out and worried, or you're irritated with somebody because they're doing the wrong thing. When you're focused, you can sit down and pick up on any sort of information the way you read that really good book. So what we're talking about here, guys, is step-by-step methodology to help you to be able to deliberately slow your brain rhythms down, go into that alpha level. And we have 10 different sessions in the course where we help you to use the alpha level for specific things. Now, I just want to make this really clear. While you've got to slow your brain down to go into alpha, this is not about you having to sit there cross-legged in the park humming and moaning and groaning to go into alpha. I mean, imagine if that was how it all worked. You had to go along to a party and say to people, don't tell me your name yet, I've got to go into alpha. I mean, they think you're crazy, right? They think you're nuts. So we teach you 3 different ways to get your brain into alpha. And as I mentioned earlier, it is not so much getting into alpha, which is the key here, although that is brilliant. And by doing that, you de-stress and you can remove the clutter and feel more centered. But there's things you can actually do then when you're in alpha to specifically prepare you, like an athlete, so that you can be at your best. So we teach you 3 different ways to go into alpha. You're learning how to go into alpha with your eyes open during the day. So you're at work, you're in the meeting, there's people talking about new ideas or concepts, or you're getting asked questions that you weren't expecting and you haven't prepared for, but you've got this ability to be able to think quick on your feet, to be totally present, so you understand what they're asking, you understand the knowledge and the information you have, and you're able to come up with an answer that perhaps you've never given before, because your mind is focused, because you are present. So this ability to tap and use alpha is something which, as you learn to develop this, it becomes incorporated into your everyday life. So I've had people who, perhaps have done a weekend workshop with me 10 or 15 years ago, who send me emails from time to time and go, I still remember how to get into alpha. I still use it on those days when I'm feeling overwhelmed and I'm stressed out. It's like riding a bike. It's like learning to ski. It's like learning to swim. It's learning something that is a valuable skill that once you've learned how to do this, you'll always be able to have it at access to tap into. But really what it is once you understand how to use your mind better, it starts to help you to awaken. Like your intuition is now on fire, right? Yeah. You talk a little, I think, about your intuition and your ability to your workshop of the mind to come up with the ideas.
Yeah, so I used alpha. I started using alpha 10 years ago and I still use it today. We're using it in every single business. I am going into alpha nearly every morning to set up my day, to set up my goals, to remind myself who I am, what I want, what I'm looking for, and manifest a life that I really want. So